Hello, bros. We're back with Trousered Apes, Sick Literature in a Sick Society by Duncan Williams. In fact, the whole question of correspondences remains largely unexplored. William Wellwell, the catastrophist, in his philosophy of the inductive sciences, 1840, spoke of an historical chain which is extended from the beginning of things down to the present time. The links of this chain he saw as causes of all cosmic events, from those which regulate the imperceptible changes of the remotest nebulae in the heaven to those which determine the progress of civilization, polity, and literature. More recently, Ruth Anshin, editor of the series World Perspective, suggests the possibility that the creative process in the human mind, the developmental process in organic nature, and the basic laws of the inorganic realm may be but varied expressions of a universal formative process. Both these hypotheses provide an explanation for the compact unity which every historical epoch presents. They also imply an historical determinism, a close ally to despair. When man adopts a deterministic attitude to events, he becomes a passive spectator of human destiny, unable to exercise any influence over the forces molding his thoughts and actions. A victim and not a shaper of history. Under such circumstances, mankind is totally unable to withstand the rise of Nazism or any other form of oppression, and even, in the last analysis, to judge, since the inevitability of such regimes makes a mockery of moral judgment. The increasing tendency by novelists and dramatists to depict contemporary man as a victim rather than as a hero is an indication of the potency and prevalence of such an outlook. Predictably, this coincides with a growing reluctance to judge, a refusal to accept normative standards, and an uncritical acceptance of relativism. Ultimately, all actions and values, virtue and vice, normalcy and abnormality, truth and falsehood become meaningless, and social, aesthetic, and cultural anarchy prevails. The result is a society in which everything is permitted, the final triumph of egalitarianism, since all human action, as well as men, are reduced to a state of unjudgeable equality. Extreme egalitarianism would appear to be not only the ultimate product of determinism, but also, in a cyclical manner, its original source. In a hierarchical society, the mass of people is disposed to feel that the ruler or ruling class is in control of events. They may not approve of the policies being implemented, but at least they are being manipulated by a human force. At such times, history is regarded as the outcome of the actions of great men, whether they be oppressors or liberators. In an egalitarian society, however, the converse tends to be true. As de Tocqueville has observed, in the ages of equality, all men are independent of each other, isolated and weak. The movements of the multitude are not permanently guided by the will of any individuals. At such times, humanity seems always to advance of itself. Italics, mine. Much of contemporary despair springs from an absence of absolute standards and of any authority, sacred or secular, and herein lies a curious paradox. Man desires freedom to do as he wishes, but once such a state is attained, sickens of the ensuing moral and social anarchy. The Raskolnikovian, characterized by a desire to destroy both himself and society, is frequently not only the instigator of such freedom movements, but also the only one who enjoys the outcome. His sadism is gratified by the destruction of order, while he derives masochistic pleasure from the ensuing chaos and purposelessness in which he, together with the rest of humanity, is enveloped. In the rhetoric of fiction, Wayne Booth observes that one possible reaction to a fragmented society may be to retreat to a private world of values, but another might well be to build works of art that themselves help to mold a new consensus. Acknowledging that there are philosophical and psychological obstacles militating against such a consensus, he singles out nihilism as the most powerful of these. Nihilism is, after all, not merely despair and negation, but above all, the desire to despair and negate. It is necessary to recognize that there is an intellectual and moral fifth column, a cultural guerrilla group at work in literature and society. There is not only a wariness with the striving to be men, but an active desire on the part of some for such wariness. An apocalyptic death urge that Weltschmerz, which Wellworth concedes to be the chief philosophical standpoint of the avant-garde. Broadly speaking, literature can be described as aristocratic in tone until approximately 1700. Thereafter, it became increasingly middle class until about 1914, when it began to assume a proletarian nature. As Anthony Lejeune has pointed out, much of contemporary literature may be about the common man, but it can hardly be intended for him. One suspects that an exclusively proletarian audience would yawn hopelessly through waiting for Godot, and at the conclusion demand its money back. Lejeune proceeds to ask if anyone really wants a society shaped by John Osborne for the delectation of Jimmy Porter, or plunged into lunacy by Harold Pinter, or peopled by the hideous imaginings of Genet or Beckett. He concludes that no one, including these writers, would wish to inhabit such a world, while Lejeune emphasizes the wide gap between the abstract theoretical world presented to the public by these dramatists and the world of reality. He appears to ignore the mania for iconoclasm, which permeates the modern arts, an iconoclasm closely linked to egalitarianism. Let's see what this footnote is. 1. The iconoclasm manifests itself in all art forms and is not just in literature. In an article, Pop Music Given Voice to a Restless Generation, National Observer, 15 January 1968. Daniel Green writes as follows: places long known for highbrow or Hollywood slick entertainment now vibrate to the cacophony of psychedelic and acid rock, the trenchant strains of folk and protest rock, the sensual effusion of soul, the raucous incongruity of a new, harsh music made from an activity as old as mankind. Destruction. Instruments are smashed or blown up. Italics mine. In 1966, a Destruction in Art Symposium was held in London, and an invitation to attend was issued to all artists who have used actual destruction of materials as part of their technique. Where the hell was I? And I've lost my way, just like art has. Oh, there we go. The only way to ensure complete and absolute equality is to reduce all men to the same level. To deny man's dignity, to stress his animalism, and to sneer at any form of idealism. Confronted by the absurd, Camus saw initially two courses open to man: physical suicide or philosophical suicide. But is it not possible that there is a third form of suicide, what one might term social suicide? Suicide is the result of a ceasing to strive, a desire to cease to be. An idea, on the other hand, involves a perpetual struggle towards an unreachable goal. This is the distinction Ortega makes between the noble life and the common life. Nobility is synonymous with a life of effort, ever set on excelling itself and passing beyond what one is to what one sets up as a duty and an obligation. In this way, the noble life stands opposed to the common or inert life, which reclines statically upon itself, condemned to perpetual immobility, unless an external force compels it to come out of itself. Effort is, therefore, incompatible with conscious hedonism, but mass life with its lack of need for social or spiritual striving, which, theoretically at least, regards any such striving as pretentious and anti-egalitarian, is ideally suited to such pleasure-seeking. The Panamet Circenses philosophy of rulers is not just the cynical interpretation of the desires of the mass, but a realistic evaluation of such. Asceticism, on the other hand, is not likely to appeal to an egalitarian culture because it presupposes that some will be more successful than others in achieving such an idea. Full geniality, however, is an eminently suitable goal for such a culture, since copulation is the common denominator to all, civilized man and savage alike. What's the point of a revolution, sings the chorus in Vice's Marat Sade, without general copulation? What point, indeed, since only when all men are bent solely upon gratifying their physical desires can true equality be imposed. In other words, egalitarian societies are hedonistic both as a result of being egalitarian and as a means of perpetuating and protecting the basis of their existence. Situational ethics, which results in every man becoming his own judge and moralist, is but another manifestation of the egalitarian and anti-authoritarian spirit which permeates the modern scene. The violence and animalism which dominate the contemporary arts can now be seen in still another light, though continuing to be part of the compact unity of our epoch. The violence is the fury of the proletarian writer who, not realizing or not wishing to admit that he is already victorious, continues to fulminate against the old order, against nobility, against gentility, against all pretensions, which he styles hypocrisy. To be natural is everything, and is not animalism the most natural state of man? However, in such state are not all men equal. Considering the large and growing number of television programs involving audience participation in which the sole purpose is to humiliate the contestants and thereby strip them of their dignity, the fact that they receive prizes for their participation renders the spectacle even more depressing. This form of entertainment may well be, as Pamela Hansford Johnson suggests, merely a contemporary restoration of the pillory, the stocks, and the ducking stool as spectator sports. The result is what I have called social suicide, which is perhaps merely a variant of Fiedler's weariness with the striving to be men. The compulsive hunt for equality can also be seen in the hatred of form and style which characterizes contemporary poetry, art, and music. Nietzsche observed that strong natures enjoy their finest gaiety in the constraint of style, while conversely it is weak characters without power over themselves who hate such constraint. The traditional poet, artist, and musician trained long and arduously for his vocation. One recalls the 5 years which Milton spent at Horton, the exacting apprenticeship of the Renaissance painters under the tutelage of a master, and the child Mozart practicing ceaselessly. Since all cannot indulge in such intensive preparation, art must come down from its pedestal and make itself available to the masses. The result is poetry without the bothersome restraint of form, pop art and op art in which anyone can indulge, and music which is so unprofessional by former standards that an amateur can quickly reproduce a passable rendering. The names of some of the currently fashionable groups are in themselves revealing. One styles itself group therapy, another the animals. The animals were good. It can all be summed up in the words of a currently popular lyric, in itself an echo of Swinburne's glory to the man in the highest. I for man is the master of things. Or is that a separation? We have no need for a God. Each of us is his own. Similarly, we have no need for great poets, artists, and musicians, and art is then reduced to the level of subjective therapy, or no greater importance than a cold bath. The confession of Picasso referred to in the second chapter is again revealing. From the moment when art is no longer the food of the superior, Falliment de Malheurs, the artist can all right, I give up. The artist can exteriorize his talent in a new formulae, in all manner of caprices and fantasies, and in all varieties of intellectual charlatanism. People no longer seek either consolation or exaltation in the arts. Instead, they seek the new, the extraordinary, the extravagant, the scandalous. To those who may ask, is this of any major importance? I would reply as follows. Great art is that which in the past sustained and elevated mankind. It represented the conquest by man over the diverse and bewildering complexities of his own nature and of the world surrounding him. It resulted in that clarification of life, a momentary stay against confusion, which Robert Frost maintained was the true aim and purpose of poetry. The clarification of life, a momentary stay against confusion. That's the purpose of poetry to Robert Frost. Such art involves a prodigious effort and concentration on the part of its creator and demands a cultivated response from its audience. As such, it is exclusive both in terms of those able to create it and those who can appreciate it. It constitutes a minority culture and is therefore to be detested and feared by the majority of contemporary writers and artists with their egalitarian allegiance, reinforced by the financial rewards of serving an undiscriminating mass market. Huckleberry Finn has already been removed from some libraries in the United States because of its alleged racist nature. Will Othello share its fate, followed by The Tempest? Will Demos, in fact, and not Caliban, cast out Ariel? And will Henry V, which portrays a king as a hero, be the next victim? The following by Harold Rosenberger emphasizes that what I am suggesting is not fantasy. If history can make into art what is now art, if history can make into art what is not now art, it can also unmake what is now art. It is conceivable that Michelangelo, Vermeer, Goya, Cezanne will someday cease to be art. It is only necessary that an extreme ideology shall seize power and cast out existing masterpieces as creatures of darkness. The purpose of this chapter has been to indicate that an extreme ideology is in the process of seizing power, if indeed it has not already succeeded. The censorship of Huckleberry Finn should have produced indignant reactions from all true liberals, but prevailing liberalism is basically illiberal, intolerant of any opposition. It is narrow, morally arrogant, and has far more in common with other extremist groups than those who espouse it would care to recognize. And anything it considers anti-liberal must surely merit censorship. Footnote. A short time ago, I delivered Chapter 4 of this book as a paper before a group of university teachers. Afterwards, a young woman of advanced liberal views approached me and said in all seriousness, "You're advocating censorship. You shouldn't be allowed to publish it." Oh, the irony. A book was recently published in England with the intriguing title, 50 Works of English Literature We Could Do Without. Among the 50 were the following: The Fairy Queen, Hamlet, The Pilgrim's Progress, Tom Jones, She Stoops to Conquer, The School for Scandal, Lamb's Essays, Pickwick Papers, Wuthering Heights, Tests of the Durbanvilles, Peter Pan, The Forsyth Saga, and Alice in Wonderland. In American literature, which is gratuitously included, the following could apparently be dispensed with: Huckleberry Finn, predictably, The Scarlet Letter, Moby Dick, A Farewell to Arms, and The Sound and the Fury. The iconoclasm revealed in this list, it is obvious, and its very extent indicates a passionate ideological motive for the rejection of the works enumerated, all of which demand, to a greater or lesser extent, a cultivated response on the reader's part. They therefore have no place in the mass culture of today, and it is not difficult to see the title of the book being changed to include the phrase, "You will do without." And that will end this rendering, even though there's only, 5 more pages. I cannot go on. As planned, we stop here. Goodbye.